Every era believes it is the peak of history. People in the Middle Ages thought their world was the natural order. Those living through industrialization saw factories as the inevitable future. And today, we believe that our society is stable, that we are merely refining an already completed world. But historians of the future will look back and wonder, did we even realize we were living in the middle of a profound transformation? It all starts with technology. The past few decades have fundamentally changed how people work, communicate, and think. Yet, we rarely grasp the full scale of this change. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool, it is beginning to think, create, and decide. Machines are writing texts, generating images, and making predictions. Some celebrate this as a revolution, others fear we are losing control over the very systems we built. What happens when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence? Is this the dawn of a new industrial revolution, or are we approaching an age where human labor and creativity are no longer essential? Beyond AI, the digitalization of everyday life is reshaping our reality. People spend hours on screens, interacting through digital platforms, absorbing news and opinions shaped by algorithms. The most significant aspect of this transformation is not just how we communicate, but how it alters our perception of reality itself. Future historians might see this era as the time when truth became fluid, when reality could be manipulated in ways no one had anticipated. Never before has information been so accessible, yet so unreliable. Is this the golden age of knowledge, where humanity is more informed than ever, or is it an era of confusion, where facts are drowned in an ocean of misinformation? While technology reshapes human life, the physical world faces existential threats. Climate change, once a distant concern, is now an undeniable force. Rising temperatures, extreme weather, melting glaciers, scientists have warned about these dangers for decades. And yet, political action remains slow, economic interests stand in the way, and societies hesitate to embrace radical change. Future generations might look back on this moment as a turning point. Was this the last chance to prevent catastrophe? Did humanity act in time, or will history judge this as the era of denial, the moment when it was still possible to change course but the world hesitated? Society itself is also in flux. Conversations about identity, equality, and justice are shaping the way people see themselves and each other. Long-standing norms are being questioned, challenged, redefined. Some see this as progress, an overdue correction of historical injustices. Others fear division, a fracturing of social cohesion. Future historians might describe this period as an age of necessary transformation, or as a time of deepening conflict ere ideological battles overshadowed larger, looming crises. And amid all these shifts, politics remains fragile. Democracies once thought to be stable are under pressure. Populist movements rise, authoritarian leaders gain influence, and political polarization deepens. Will historians see this as the beginning of a global shift away from democracy, or will they recognize it as a difficult but necessary phase of evolution, where old systems adapted to new realities? One thing is certain, this era will not be remembered as a quiet, uneventful time. It will be studied as an age of disruption, a moment when the world stood at a crossroads. And we, who live through it, often fail to see that we are not just witnesses to history, we are the ones shaping it. As history unfolds, the weight of the present is often invisible to those living through it. We go about our daily lives, convinced that the world around us is fixed, that change happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. But the future will look back and see our era as one of rapid, almost chaotic transformation, a time when everything, from technology to politics to the climate, was in flux. The way we interact with the world has shifted dramatically, and yet, because we experience these changes gradually, we fail to recognize how revolutionary they truly are. Consider artificial intelligence. In just a few years, it has moved from a niche experiment to a force capable of writing, composing, and even making autonomous decisions. Entire industries are being reshaped, and the question arises, how long will human creativity, human labor, human intelligence remain irreplaceable? If the 20th century was the age of industrial automation, the 21st is becoming the age of cognitive automation. Machines are no longer just tools, they are decision makers, creators, even advisors. What happens when they surpass our abilities in ways we never anticipated? The impact of technology does not stop at the workplace. It reaches into politics, shaping narratives, manipulating perceptions, influencing elections. Never before has the control of information been so powerful, so immediate. Algorithms, designed to predict and influence human behavior, determine what news we see, what opinions are amplified, what truths become widely accepted. In previous centuries, the control of information was the privilege of rulers, publishers, and media moguls. Now, it is dictated by unseen mathematical systems, optimizing for engagement rather than truth. Will the future see this as the great democratization of knowledge, or as the beginning of a world where reality itself was shaped by profit-driven, emotion-fueled algorithms? While digital landscapes dominate human interaction, the natural world continues to deteriorate. The climate crisis is no longer a distant scenario, it is happening now. Forests burn, ice caps melt, oceans rise. Yet, despite overwhelming scientific consensus, meaningful change remains slow. Governments set targets for decades in the future, industries resist transformation, and individuals feel powerless against the sheer scale of the problem. The future may look back on this moment with disbelief. Why, when the evidence was clear, did action come so late? Or perhaps, history will record this as the moment when everything shifted, when grassroots movements forced change, when innovation provided solutions, when humanity finally confronted its most existential challenge. Meanwhile, societies are engaged in profound debates over identity, equality, and justice. Old systems of power are being questioned, challenged, dismantled. Discussions on race, gender, privilege, and history dominate public discourse. Some see this as an awakening, a necessary correction of past injustices. Others view it as division, as a cultural shift that fractures rather than unites. The future will tell whether this was the beginning of a more just society, or a moment of upheaval that struggled to balance change with cohesion. And then there is democracy, a system long assumed to be the pinnacle of governance, now appearing fragile in many parts of the world. Populist movements rise, trust in institutions erodes, and the lines between fact and propaganda blur. Will the historians of tomorrow see this as the decline of democratic rule, or as a turbulent phase that forced democracies to evolve and adapt? This era is one of contradictions, of great progress and great uncertainty, of expanding knowledge and deepening confusion, of technological marvels and environmental collapse. The future will look back and judge, but for now, we live in the midst of history, uncertain of how our time will be remembered. In the end, history is never truly written by those who live through it. We move forward, making choices, debating, struggling with the problems of our time, never knowing which moments will be remembered and which will fade into obscurity. And yet, the future will look back at this era, trying to understand what it felt like to be here, to live in a world of limitless information, accelerating change, and looming crises. Perhaps they will wonder about our hopes and fears. Did we see ourselves as pioneers of a new age, or did we feel overwhelmed by forces beyond our control? The rapid expansion of artificial intelligence, the reshaping of economies, the rise of new social norms, were these signs of progress, or did they signal the end of an era we once took for granted? The future may ask whether we hesitated too long, whether we allowed comfort and denial to outweigh action, whether we were too consumed by short-term distractions to see the larger picture. They will study how we lived, not just in terms of politics and technology, but in the details of everyday life. How did we experience this world of constant digital connection, where attention was fragmented, where news and entertainment blurred together? Did we feel more informed, or just more exhausted? Did the vast networks of online communication bring people closer, or did they make human relationships more fragile? And yet, history is not only a story of struggles and crises. It is also a record of resilience, of those who pushed forward when the future seemed uncertain. Perhaps they will remember this time as one where people fought for a better world, scientists, activists, artists, thinkers, all shaping the world that would follow. Perhaps they will see that, despite our fears, this was not an era of decline but one of transformation. We cannot know how our time will be judged. We only know that we are living through it, making decisions that will shape the world to come. And as with every era before us, the people of the future will look back, trying to understand what it was like to stand at this crossroads, never fully realizing that we, in this moment, were already part of history.